For the first time since the inception of the case against former President Jacob Zuma, on the 29th of May, he finally pleaded not guilty to the 16 charges of corruption, fraud and money laundering against him.
Could I ask you to stand, please? You have followed the charges that have been put to you now from the indictment, am I correct?
Yes. And
no doubt, in consultation with your legal representatives, these charges have been explained to you. You understand what they entail?
Yes, I do.
May I ask you then as to how you plead to the charges that have been put to you, which are respectively counts 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 to 18, with the sub-counts and alternatives that have been read out?
Yes, I heard them.
How do you plead to them?
I plead not guilty.
Thank you. You may be seated.
This moment gave the signal that after nearly 2 decades in the making, the trial would finally get underway. But in line with his strategy throughout the case, Zuma not only introduced a new senior counsel, his legal team filed a Section 1061H plea as per the Criminal Procedures Act to have lead prosecutor Billy Downer recuse himself from the matter.
I give notice of my intention to raise a further plea in terms of Section 106(1)H of the Criminal Procedure Act 1977. For that reason, for the reasons that are set out in the plea explanation, Mr. Downer should be removed as the prosecutor in this case, as he has no title to prosecute. There are facts and circumstances involving the conduct of Mr. Downer and the NPA generally relevant to the protection and interpretation of my rights under Section 35(3) of the Constitution, for which it is necessary that Mr. Downer be removed as a prosecutor in the case. 15. Furthermore, there are facts and circumstances that give me a reasonable impression that Mr. Downer has conducted himself in this case in a manner that lacks the independence and impartiality that is necessary for a lawful prosecution. Examining his role in the totality of the facts and circumstances of this case, Mr. Downer has failed to uphold the standard and prosecutorial independence and impartiality needed to secure that my trial is fair and conducted in accordance with the Constitution.
Downer is the same senior counsel who successfully prosecuted Zuma's financial advisor, Shabir Sheikh, in 2004. He was opposed to then National Director of Public Prosecutions, Bulelani Ngcobo's decision not to try Zuma and Sheikh at the same time. Nearly 2 decades later, this very decision has formed part of Zuma's defense, arguing that there was never evidence against him and that continuing with the trial against him forms part of a long-standing political witch hunt against him. Zuma claims that Downer is hell-bent on seeing him behind bars.
His opposition to the NPA's basis for defending the termination of prosecution decision places him in a position of a prosecutor who is neither independent nor impartial in relation to my rights to a fair trial or the obligation of the state to ensure that I enjoy a fair trial.
But when the oral evidence for the special plea was meant to be heard in late July, Zuma had already begun his 15-month jail sentence after the Constitutional Court found him guilty of contempt of court for failing to appear before the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. They sought to have the matter postponed for another 3 weeks to allow them to consult with their client, whom they claimed they had no access to at the Escort Correctional Facility.
This application is Stalingrad Season 27.
Zuma's legal counsel was granted their request and the matter was postponed to August. But another delay was on the horizon, this time as a result of Zuma's ill health.
We are at the moment completely in the dark as to the justification for the postponement, and more particularly Mr. Zuma's condition. The doctor's letter doesn't identify the medical condition of which he suffers at all, and says quite perplexingly that it's been a condition that has required extensive emergency procedures which have been delayed for 18 months.
After nearly 2 days of arguments, Judge Piet Koen reserved judgment to the 26th of October for when he will hand down his ruling. Since then, Zuma's foundation has laid criminal charges against Billy Downer at a police station in Pietermaritzburg just days before Koen is expected to give his judgment. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Ziyanda Ngcobo in Johannesburg.